So I'm going to give a quick tutorial on how to set up your renders in After Effects. It's really, really simple. There's a few things that we're going to want to go through, and I'll show you how to set up a new render template every time you want to render something out. You don't want to have to go back through all the outputs and all that kind of stuff, so we're going to set it up really simply just using the output modules, creating a new output module. But first off, let's just look at what this project is. I'm just going to hit 0 on my keypad, and you can see that it's gonna do the animations there. You're seeing it in the graph view. I'm just gonna switch that up so you can see it just what it looks like with keyframes. The first thing I'd like to say is you see how we have our action happening right here. It's basically finishing up in 2 seconds. We only want to render out that 2 seconds of the video. So the first thing you really need to think about is that we need to set our preview bar, which is up at the top here. The preview bar, you'll see the two little blue tabs. This is going to be your in point wherever you move this, and on the far side you'll see this is your out point. A really, really quick way to fix this or to get this set up is you hit B for beginning and put your playhead to where you want it to end, and you hit N for end. I have to apologize, I have a cold, so I'm not sounding so good. Either way, once we have this thing set up where we have the preview bar set up to this size, when you hit your space bar, or in my case with the longer format keyboard, it allows me to hit 0 on the keypad. That's a really quick way to get a RAM preview going. So now you can see that it's just swinging back and forth, and that's because my preview setup is set to loop. So as soon as it hits that final keyframe or that final part of the preview bar, it's going to go right back to the beginning. So it looks as though it's looping, but just to give you an idea, if you were to render this out, it's not going to be a looping render. It's just going to be that 2 seconds of render. Okay, so when the video actually comes out, it's going to start here, go over to here, and then it's literally going to stop at this point. So the first thing we want to do, I'm going to do it up through the menu bars here. We're going to go to Composition, and we are going to go to Add to Render Queue. And when we go to add to render queue, I like to do it this way first because I really, really like it when you put out your very, very best work from the start with this. When you put your very best work out from the start, like the highest quality video, we can always go and take this into Media Encoder later to turn it into like an H.264 video or any format that you really want. You can technically do that in After Effects as well throughout all the settings. But just my personal opinion is that you like to get the very best render out of After Effects, and then afterwards you basically want to mess around with that after. So we're going to go here where it says Output Module. If I click on here where it says ProRes 422 Normal, I'll just show this like this. If I click on here where it's got the little drop-down menu, it's going to bring up a whole bunch of different things. We might all have different things when we look at this. I've already set up templates that I work with at home, so what you see here is probably going to be a little bit different from what you actually see on your own computer, but the way that we would set this up, say it comes up and it starts off as, it'll say lossless or animation or something along those lines. We can click into that little down drop arrow here, and we could say Make Template. This opens up the output module template. And what we would do with this is we would call this one ProRes 422, okay? And then we would have to edit the settings. And we would choose QuickTime as the format. And when we go into the format options, click in there. We have where it says video codec. You're going to click into here and you're going to choose the one that you want to use. In this case, we're going to use ProRes 422. Just to go over this real quick, you have ProRes 422, you have 422 HQ, which is high quality, 422 LT, which is a lower quality, a faster render, 422 Proxy, which is the lowest quality but a very, very fast render. I wouldn't advise using any of these. If you wanted to, you could definitely use the HQ version, but ProRes 422 is just perfect for pretty much everything that we use. The other one that we would get into is the ProRes 4444, and what that is is the exact same render, but it also allows you to render out an alpha channel with it, whereas the regular 422 doesn't contain an alpha. But in this situation, if you ever wanted to go back through this and turn it to 4444, you just go through the same setup. So we'll go ProRes 422 and we hit OK. We just want to see our audio setup here. So if you leave it on auto, it's always, if you have audio in your scene, it's going to render with audio, and if it doesn't have it, it's going to render without audio. Or you can physically change it. So if you always wanted to make sure that you rendered without or with, that's how you would get it. So auto is probably the way to go with this. The only other thing that we would look at is that if you did change it to something that carried an alpha channel, you'd want to go into the channels here and you go RGB, click on that, and you're going to see that it's grayed out for this because it's the ProRes 422 version. It doesn't actually allow you to have an alpha channel with it. But if it was a different codec, it would have that, and you would choose that so that you would be rendering out with the alpha channel. But in this case, we're just rendering out RGB, and we hit OK. Then we go into this area here. This is basically going to be every time you click to create a new render, these are going to be the things that pop up first. So if you have the ProRes 422 in that first setting here, it's automatically always going to show up here every time you render it. And you have to actually go into the drop down to change that. It's not really a big deal, but it's just whatever you render out most, just leave it as that. So I would choose that 422 normal. The second one I have here is the frame default. So if I wanted to save out a frame or an image, that image is actually going to be, for this, it's going to be JPEG outputs, but if I wanted it to be a PNG sequence or a PSD sequence or any other sort of image with that, that's where you would find that. Everything else here, we just leave as is, and we just hit OK. Okay, so it automatically comes up where it says ProRes 422. And then the other thing we have to look at here is going to be where our output is. You don't need to click on the drop down. That will allow you to do a number of different things here. So after the render is done, it'll say render the comp to the with the folder and name, render the comp and the output module name, etc., etc., etc. Okay, you never really have to deal with that. All you need to deal with is clicking the blue type here. That's what the name of it is. And then finding the proper place for you to render it out. And I'm just going to call this one squares test. And that's going to render, I don't want things rendering on my desktop, but for this case, it's going to render out to the desktop. So once we hit, actually let me just click back to here so you can see this. Once I click on this and I hit save, it doesn't render it out. It just saves the actual output format. So we need to click on this button over here, which is the render button, the blue button. And when we click it, it's going to run through it really quickly. You'll hear a bing on your end, and then you know that you've done it well. So as soon as you hear that, you can actually go back through to where you rendered it. For me, it's going to be on the desktop. I got a lot of stuff on my computer, sorry about that. And I'm just going to hit the spacebar just to give a quick preview of this. And there we go, we've got the render. So that's pretty much the 101 on how you would render outside of After Effects. If you wanted to, I'm just going to give you another detail here. If we're back in this composition, say we made a change to it, we made this thing longer, and I'm going to actually select all of these. Cool trick that I was showing you guys last week is if you have all your keys selected and you hold Alt and pull it, it keeps that same animation, but say we wanted it to be 4 seconds, having the same sort of velocity happening. We could render this out again, and the way you would do that is hitting Command M. And that automatically, that's our hotkey to bring up this render setting. We already have it set up as our ProRes because that's what we have in our template box. And then I'll call this one Squares Test V2. Hit save. Again, it's not going to render it until we actually hit the button. So the button over here, we click it, let that thing render through. It's going to be a little bit longer. Pretty much, it's pretty fast though. And then it's rendered. And again, we could just check our Finder here, look at where the desktop is for mine. Select that, do a quick preview. There we go. That's the new animation that's happening there. And I think that should basically give you the setup of how to render. And if you have any questions, you can definitely send me an email about it. But that's the basics. Okay, so thanks a lot, and I'll post some more videos.